Guys, it's Declan at Laco Properties. Welcome back. Today we're going to have a quick chat with Kev and Tyler on sales, just to talk through what they go through and the research they do when they're looking at valuing a home, to give you guys an idea as to actually the thought process that goes into valuing and some of the challenges that sellers need to think about when putting their house on the market. All right, guys, so we've got Kevin and Tyler on our sales team here, and we're just going to talk about the valuation, the thought process initially behind the valuation process. Had a few valuations book in over the last week or two, so I thought it'd be a good opportunity for us to kind of talk about how do you prepare for a valuation, how are you coming up with your figures, and the thought process behind it, so that the people at home can kind of understand what you're doing.
Yes, please. So typically, valuation comes in. I see it in the diary. One of the first things I'll do is do a Google Street View, just to look at the property from the outside, look at the surrounding areas in case there's anything obvious I need to be aware of. Jump on the internet and sort of do some of my background research. So that will be largely seeing what someone's maybe paid for the property, if it's been on the market before, other properties that are on the market nearby, whether that be for sale or whether that be sold. That's typically a lot of the background I'll do. If I can see what they've paid for it, I can then track market data to see effectively what that should be worth now. You've got to be careful with that though, because
leave it with us.
For example, I was doing valuation prep for a valuation I've got tomorrow, which is a 2-bedroom semi-detached house in Sandhills. They only bought the property 4 years ago, so the data should be quite accurate, but in terms of the websites we use and what's on the market at the moment, there's, for a 2-bedroom semi-detached modern properties, a £50,000 range. So it's then using experience and kind of gut instinct as well, and working out where that range is and what the right figure is really.
And so that kind of comes down to experience, as you say, discretion. I guess you have a scenario where there is a £50,000 swing in value that is evidence, essentially, that you can see in front of you.
Yep.
Talk about the thought process that you go through personally when you're trying to make that decision, not necessarily for it to be one end or the other, but the things you're looking out for to try and help you make a decision.
Yeah, so a lot of that is down to experience and gut instinct, properties that I've been inside, but then also kind of tuning into the finer details of what has sold. So the property that was kind of at the top end of that £50,000 range is on paper, and the way it's described, the same house, it's same layout. It's a 2-bed semi as well in the same development. But when you actually look into the aspects of the property, you then realise that it's actually nearly 200 square foot bigger. So there's a reason for why it's at the top end of that. A lot of agents maybe wouldn't pick up on some of that information, I think, and just see, there's a 2-bed semi that's under offer at X, so that's what it should be worth. Or we're even going to go higher than that, and that's what you then get.
Yeah, I always think there's multiple factors, isn't there, to the difference in value, and sometimes that can be just conditions, sometimes that can be plot size, that one's slightly bigger, and like you say, with the square footage and stuff like that. So there's multiple different factors as to why a value can be different, and I don't subscribe to that feeling that, that one sold for that, so that must be worth that. That's not always the way in which it works. It's every property, and I mean this, every property is different.
And in terms of you're prepping to go out for a valuation, generally you're not the only agent going out to value a property. It would be agent A, B, C, D, E from the high street or whoever it may be. Does the fact there's other agents going to value, does that play into how you value a property? Do you give consideration as to the figures they might come up with when you're giving your valuation? How does that factor at all?
My personal view is I don't. It doesn't bother me whether I'm the only agent going or whether they've got 2, 3, 5, 10. It doesn't bother me. It definitely used to. So when I'd first start valuing properties, and for the first few years, I would think, I know that these certain agents are going out, so I need to maybe think, well, it could be this, but it may be this. So we'll be on the higher end of things just to try and help win the business ultimately. But no, I don't think it affects me now. I think I'll kind of back myself and how we work, and what we do right and maybe what we do different, and use my experience and my knowledge and kind of, I guess, the research I've done to justify my price, whether that works for the seller or not.
That's really interesting. And I want to hear from both of you on this, actually, because we know, and I think a lot of people know in the industry, that there are certain agents that will overvalue properties to win the instruction. You kind of touched on it, that you felt like in the past you had to elevate a valuation to help you get the business. That's not necessarily something that you do now, etc. It's not really part of our ethos, but that exists industry wide from every town and city in the country. How do you overcome the objections from a seller that might have had these inflated?
I'm just cutting on that last.
Yeah.
Because I totally agree with what Kevin said, and I probably need to be a little bit more like Kevin in that respect. I think I'm always not necessarily interested in the valuation that the other agent's given. I'm interested in which agents they have called out to come and value their property.
Okay, why is that?
Because we all differ so much.
Yeah.
So a lot of people have that same sort of thing of, oh, you all do the same thing. Incorrect. That's not true. And I'm always interested to know if I'm going up against more of a corporate estate agent or a small independent that's going to offer a service more personable, which I feel that we do. Like you say, I back myself as well in terms of the service we give, and you spoke there about ethos. So yeah, I think I'm interested more to know which agents have been called out to value, so I know what I'm up against, I guess, in many ways. But yeah, I probably, like I say, I need to be a little bit more like Kevin.
Be more Kevin.
Yeah,
I like
That's the name of the video.
Yeah. I think we'll call the video "Be More Kevin." So going back to just quickly, a couple of agents have been out ahead of you, given their valuations over. You then go there, and your valuation is lower than the potential vendor has been given. Yeah. How do you then overcome the objections that naturally come from that? It doesn't even have
to be lower. I've had it both ways, where I might be lower, but I've also had it where I might be higher. And if they've had a couple of other agents that are lower, they might be thinking, oh, do we really think we can get this money? Or do I really think it's only worth this? So I've seen it both ways, experienced it both ways. And that's where the research comes in. It can be that, look, XYZ has sold for this has happened in the market since, or your home is different because of ABC, whatever it's going to be, and you justify it. So, and it's normally by sold data, and that could then come into the equation of the size of properties if they're similar, which is why I'll always look at the square foot. And I think because I've had a background of pricing up a lot of new builds and stuff, you're looking at the price per square foot of a lot of different property, and that's been ingrained into my mind over the years, I guess. So yeah, looking at that, but yeah, I've had to justify a lower valuation, but I've also had to justify it the other way at a higher price as well.
Sure. And in terms of, you kind of touched on this, Tyler. I'm interested in both your perspectives. You said, not what estate agents do from company to company is not exactly the same. What are some of the differences that you display in how you work between, say, us or any other kind of small independent business? Because I don't feel like we're unique in, we are a small independent estate agent. We are fighting for business. We are fighting for our lives in what is potentially a difficult year in the property industry. But we deliver a service time and time again, the same as many other small businesses like us, versus the kind of the big property mills almost that are just churning properties through and through. What are some of the differences?
Us and the experience that we have, and it, like you said a minute ago, about backing yourself and understanding your experience within the industry. I mean, how long have you been doing the job for?
17 years.
17 years. I've been doing it for 10 years, just over 10 years. So straight away, we know what we're talking about. There'll be many obstacles in a sales transaction that we will be dealing with. We won't be farming you over to a sales progression department or anything like that. There's these minor details that come up, and I'm sure we'll talk about them in future videos, that I think are really important that we have the experience of dealing with. So yeah, if you're asking for a USP, if you like, here, you know, the personal service that we can offer, I truly believe it. I truly believe it.
Yeah, it's very much that, because like, on the face of it, we're a small independent agent. But I came from a small independent agent, if you like, family-run business.
Mm-hmm.
But even then, as a small independent agent, and that was obviously a big USP for us as well, I would go and do the valuation and put it on the market. And there's every chance that the sellers may not see me until they're actually bringing in the keys on the day of completion to hand over, because we've got a hierarchy where negotiators are then doing all the viewings, etc. And then because it's their sale, they're then progressing it through predominantly with a bit of sort of overseeing. But I'm kind of then on to the next house, right, we're going to put that on the market kind of thing. Whereas now it's very much, it's us from start to finish.
It's continuity and communication throughout the process. It's so stressful. Moving can be so stressful for people. It's our job to just take that away completely, as much as we can. People have their own stresses in life. But yeah, it's the way in which you're dealing with us.
And sellers like that. They know they've got experience. They know they've got the same person or a couple of people from start to finish. So they know when they call up, they're speaking to Kevin or Tyler. They know if they've got a viewing, they're happy to go out the house, take the dog for a walk or whatever, because they've got trust in us and our experience and things like that as well.
And are there any kind of objections that you come across? And I'm speaking in the scenario now of you guys are Laco Properties. You're going out trying to win business for Laco Properties, trying to give the best advice as Laco Properties. Are there any objections that kind of come out of the blue based on the fact that we are a small independent? What sort of objections do you face, and how do those become overcome? Because I mean, I hear it myself. You know, a common one is, I've never heard of you before.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest one. I haven't heard of Laco before, or I didn't. Where are you guys? I didn't know you had an office or whatever. Yeah, I think it's an easier thing, much easier thing to overcome now, because actually it's, in a way, it's a positive. It's a much easier thing to overcome now than it was certainly when I started in the industry, and certainly I think COVID has certainly changed that. I think we are an out-of-date industry that's trying to move forward, and there's a lot more examples now of individual self-employed model. You look at all those kind of things, and they're kind of really making a stamp in the market. Kind of gone are the days where I'll come and put a property on the market, take it back to the office, and you've got 5 or 6 negotiators that are sitting there ringing out their database, because ultimately it doesn't happen like that.
Well, I wanted to touch on that actually, because the other thing I've heard is our agent X has said they've got 50 buyers on their database that are perfect for this.
It's about knowing your buyers. That's the most important thing.
But they're not really your buyers anymore, are they?
No, they're not.
In the digital age, we all have a database of contacts that we keep in touch with. But the reality is a lot of the leads now come from your Rightmove, Zooplas, on the markets, etc. And even your social media stuff, which you know you have to be on top of these days.
But if we know who we're dealing with and what people are looking for, then we will know who are the buyers for a specific property. It's not about going, oh, I've got 50 people on my database that are going to want to come and view your property. That is highly unlikely.
Yeah,
that's the fact. That's highly unlikely. But yeah, it's about having 2 of these and 1 of these, and listen more than you talk.
That was a bit of a cliche, that one.
Yeah, I know. No, but it's true.
That was a bit of an estate agency cliche.
If you're listening to people and what they're after, you'll know which property suits them best. That's like,
So, talk to me. What should a potential seller think about, prepare for when they're getting a valuation and thinking about putting their property on the market?
So it's obviously, in terms of the valuation, it's obviously, what do we think it's worth? What's it going to cost them? I think more importantly, it's probably, what do they need to do to prepare the house for the market, if anything? Should they spend money doing X, Y, Z? Should they just be decluttering? Should they be staging the house more, or whatever it's going to be? On your typical home, typically my advice will be try not to spend any more money on the house. It's hard to second guess who your buyer is going to be, because we're in an area that the demographic is vast. Like a lot of properties nowadays in this area of the country could be sold to first-time buyers, young families, people downsizing. It's hard. There's no point putting in a new kitchen to suit a certain demographic when another buyer could come and buy it and put their own thing in anyway.
Someone's not always going to necessarily see the value in what you add that you think is nice.
This is it. So for me, the biggest advice is normally decluttering, and that's predominantly on that's for the photos more so, if you like, than the actual viewings themselves. Just getting that kind of marketing right, which is such a big thing now, I think.
And what about when they're choosing their agent? Obviously, we know, and they should really get more than one, get 2 or 3 valuations done. What sort of things should a seller, a potential seller, be thinking about when they're choosing their agent?
I think where you advertise, I think obviously we're on Rightmove, Zoopla, and on the market. We've got our own website, social media, etc. as well. Not all the agents are on all of the platforms. The corporates, for example, on the market typically, and things like that as well. So we kind of have online with everything covered. We've got the office, we've got the window display. But I think they should be thinking, who's going to be answering the phone to my inquiries? Who's going to be dealing with them? Who's going to be on the viewings, talking, and showing my property around and selling it in the best way?
Who's going to be representing me? Because ultimately you're putting your trust, big word, your trust in our hands. And I think who's representing my home to the market, that is massively important.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, guys. Much appreciated. We will always come back with more hints, tips, and viewpoints from you guys. I think it's really crucial to do that over the course of these videos. And I think we'll do some kind of more detailed stuff based on specific scenarios that come up throughout transactions, etc. So we'll stay in touch with Kev and with Tyler. But until then, thank you very much. Like and subscribe, all that good stuff, and we'll see you soon.